He was trembling, dirty, and claimed to be running for his life. She took him in without knowing who he really was. This poor man was, in fact, a millionaire in hiding. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Now let's continue. The sun beat down mercilessly on Emma Carter's small property that August afternoon. The cracks in the soil seemed to snake endlessly across the parched land, reflecting the very fissures in her life. With calloused hands, resting on the worn wooden fence, she gazed at the horizon stained by grey clouds that promised once again a rain that never came. The warm wind blew lazily, lifting a fine layer of dust that danced in the air like small ghosts of what that land once was. Emma tucked her rebellious brown hair behind her ear, an automatic gesture that had become her nervous tic since she had taken sole responsibility for this piece of land she'd inherited from her father. "Mommy, look what I found!" The crystalline voice of Lily, her 7-year-old daughter, broke the afternoon silence. The little girl came running with something in her small hands, her curly hair bouncing in the wind, her eyes shining with that innocence Emma fought every day to preserve. "Careful, sweetheart, don't fall," Emma warned, a smile softening her tired features. Lily was her light, her safe harbor, the reason she remained standing even when everything seemed to be falling apart around her. The girl approached, breathless, proudly displaying a small wildflower that had managed to bloom between the cracks in the ground. "She's strong just like you, Mommy. She grew even with the ground all broken." Emma felt a lump in her throat. Her daughter had this unique ability to find beauty in the simplest things, to transform adversities into life lessons. As she stroked the girl's curls, her thoughts wandered to Lily's father, a painful chapter of her story that she preferred to keep locked away. In the modest kitchen of her house, yesterday's bread still waited to be delivered to the few customers she managed to keep in the region. It was with this work, combined with the sale of homemade jams and some services provided to neighbors, that Emma kept her small world turning. The afternoon progressed lazily when the first drops of rain began to fall, catching her by surprise. "Lily, let's go inside. I need to collect the bread before it gets wet," she shouted, running toward the porch where she had left the baskets exposed. It was at that moment that a strange noise caught her attention. A metallic snap, followed by a dull thud, came from the direction of the back fence of the property. Emma froze for a moment, her heart racing in her chest. Living alone with a child, she had learned to be cautious about any unusual movement. "Lily, go inside and stay in the living room," she ordered firmly, but without showing the nervousness that was beginning to grow in her chest. The girl, sensing the seriousness in her mother's tone, promptly obeyed. The rain grew heavier, forming a grey curtain that made visibility difficult. Emma grabbed the old flashlight she always kept near the door and, taking a deep breath to gather courage, began walking toward the location of the noise. Her steps were cautious, measured, as her eyes tried to penetrate the density of the rain that was now falling harder. The smell of wet earth filled the air, mixing with something else, something different. That's when her eyes finally found the source of the sound. Near the back fence, a male figure lay fallen, partially covered by the mud that was beginning to form. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. The man wore torn, dirty clothes and looked as if he had gone through hell to get there. His breathing was heavy, irregular, and when he finally raised his face, his eyes met hers. A deep, disturbing blue, filled with desperation and pleading. "Please," he whispered, before his heavy eyelids closed, losing consciousness right there in the mud forming under the increasingly heavy rain. At that moment, standing in the pouring rain, Emma didn't know that her life was about to change completely. She didn't know that this mysterious man, fallen on her property like an unexpected gift from fate, carried secrets that would transform not only her reality, but also her heart. The rain continued to punish mercilessly when Emma, contrary to all her instincts of self-preservation, decided to help the stranger. With difficulty, she managed to drag the unconscious man to the porch of her house, his soaked clothes dripping on the wooden floor. "Mommy, who is he?" asked Lily, wide-eyed with curiosity, watching from the living room door. The girl hugged her favorite stuffed rabbit, as she always did when she was nervous or anxious. "I don't know, sweetheart, but he needs help," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice calm so as not to frighten her daughter. "Go get some towels from the bathroom cabinet, please." While Lily ran to fulfill the request, Emma examined the stranger more closely. Despite his dirty and torn clothes, there was something in his features that revealed an origin different from most of the rural workers in the region. His hands, though bruised, had a delicate appearance, with long, well-cared-for fingers. The rain outside began to diminish, turning into a fine drizzle that drummed on the roof. Emma cleaned the man's face with one of the towels brought by Lily, revealing features that seemed precisely sculpted. A well-defined jawline, straight nose, expressive eyebrows. "He looks like a prince from fairy tales, Mommy," whispered Lily, now sitting on the porch floor, closely observing the stranger. "Just all dirty." Emma couldn't suppress a small smile at her daughter's innocent observation. "We'll need hot water and the first aid kit," she said, more to herself than to Lily. That's when she noticed a subtle movement in the man's eyelids. Slowly, the blue eyes opened, disoriented at first, until they focused on Emma's face. For a moment, there was only silence, filled only by the sound of the rain still falling outside. Where am I?" His voice came out hoarse, hesitant. "Safe," Emma replied, maintaining a cautious distance. "Are you passed out near my fence? Are you hurt?" The man tried to sit up, grimacing in pain in the process. "Nothing serious," he murmured, running his hand through his wet, dark hair. My name is Gabriel Morrison." Something in the way he pronounced his own name made Emma hesitate. Years of raising a daughter alone had sharpened her instinct for detecting lies, and there was something in that introduction that didn't sound completely true. "I'm Lily," the girl stepped forward, before Emma could respond. "And this is my mother, Emma. Are you really a prince?" The man seemed surprised by the question, and for a brief moment a genuine smile illuminated his tired face. "No, little one. I'm just a traveler looking for a place to rest." "Where do you come from?" questioned Emma, her voice firm, making it clear that she expected answers. "From the north," he replied after a brief hesitation. "I'm looking for work, a quiet place to start over. I can pay for lodging if you can accommodate me for a few days." Emma crossed her arms, studying the stranger with a penetrating gaze. There was much more to that story than he was telling, that was obvious, but there was also something in his eyes, a mixture of desperation and sincerity that intrigued her. "We have a vacant room in the barn," she finally said. "It's not much, but it's clean and dry. You can stay for a few days with two conditions. First, you'll help with the property work to pay for your stay. Second, any sign of trouble, and you leave immediately. I'm alone with my daughter here. I can't afford the luxury of blindly trusting strangers." Gabriel solemnly nodded. "You have my word, and I appreciate your kindness." That night, after accommodating the unexpected guest in the barn and putting Lily to bed, Emma sat for a long time in her rocking chair on the porch, watching the moon that now shone in a clear sky after the storm. Her heart was restless, divided, between compassion and caution. Little did she know that this mysterious man with his blue eyes and well-kept secrets would be the catalyst for a profound change in her life. A change that would begin to unfold the very next morning, bringing revelations that would test not only her trust, but also her ability to believe in love again. The first rays of sun had barely touched the horizon when Emma was already up, following her daily routine. The aroma of fresh bread spread through the kitchen as she organized the day's deliveries. Her thoughts, however, remained fixed on the mysterious guest sleeping in the barn. The sound of footsteps on the porch surprised her. Gabriel was standing at the kitchen door, already dressed in simple clothes that she had set aside from her father's old dresser. Despite the simplicity of the attire, there was something in his posture that completely contrasted with the rural environment. "Good morning," he greeted, his voice controlled and educated. "Can I help with something?" Emma observed him for a moment, noting how even in worn clothes he maintained a natural elegance. "You can start by helping with the chicken coop fence. It's been needing repairs for weeks." To her surprise, Gabriel showed no hesitation. With a nod, he headed outside, stopping only to pick up the tools she indicated. Emma watched him from the window as she worked in the kitchen, intrigued by the way he examined each task before executing it, as if he were studying a complex problem. "Uncle of Silences," Lily's cheerful voice sounded across the yard. The girl, already dressed for school, ran toward Gabriel, who paused his work to smile at her. "Uncle of Silences?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's because you speak little, but your eyes speak a lot," Lily replied with the typical sincerity of children. "Just like in the books Mommy reads to me, where princes have secrets kept in their hearts." Emma, who had approached to call her daughter for breakfast, noticed how Lily's words affected Gabriel. For a brief moment, his mask of serenity wavered, revealing a vulnerability he was trying to hide. During breakfast, served at the simple kitchen table, Lily filled the environment with her usual chatter, talking about school and her imaginary friends. Gabriel listened with genuine attention, asking occasional questions that showed a true interest in the girl's stories. "Do you have children, Gabriel?" Emma asked, observing the interaction between the two. A shadow passed over his face. "No," he replied simply, but there was something in his tone that suggested an untold story behind that denial. After taking Lily to the small village school, Emma returned to find Gabriel not only having fixed the chicken coop fence, but also reorganized the entire irrigation system for the small herb garden she maintained near the house. "Where did you learn to do this?" she questioned, genuinely curious. "Let's say I had to learn many different things in life," he answered, avoiding her gaze. "Sometimes circumstances force us to develop skills we never imagined needing." That enigmatic response only increased Emma's suspicions. As they worked side by side in the yard, she noticed small details that didn't fit. The way he held the tools, as if he were more accustomed to fine pens than shovels and hoes. The refined vocabulary that sometimes escaped amid casual conversations. The way his eyes constantly checked the horizon, as if he expected something or someone to appear at any moment. In the late afternoon, when shadows began to lengthen across the terrain, a black, imposing car slowly passed along the dirt road that bordered the property. Emma didn't pay much attention, but she noticed how Gabriel immediately retreated behind the barn, his body tense like a violin string about to break. "Any problem?" she asked when the vehicle finally disappeared around the bend in the road. "None," he replied quickly, but his hands trembled slightly. "I just don't like big cars very much. They bring bad memories." That night, while preparing dinner, Emma heard a soft melody coming from the barn. Approaching silently, she discovered Gabriel sitting on an old bench, strumming with surprising skill the abandoned guitar that had belonged to her father. The music was too complex for a simple rural worker, the notes intertwining in a harmony that spoke of formal education and years of practice. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice her presence, and Emma could see for the first time his completely unguarded expression, a mixture of melancholy and resignation that touched her deeply. It was at that moment that she began to understand there was much more to this man than he allowed to show. Each gesture, each carefully chosen word, each look lost on the horizon, told pieces of a story she still couldn't fully comprehend. What intrigued her most, however, was not the mysteries surrounding him, but how, despite all the secrets, he seemed to fit so naturally into their lives, as if that place, that simplicity, was exactly where he was meant to be. The days passed, and with them, Gabriel's presence became increasingly natural in the routine of the small property. His hands, previously visibly unfamiliar with heavy work, were beginning to develop calluses in the right places. But it was his eyes that had changed the most, the initial panic giving way to a serenity that seemed to grow with each sunrise. On a particularly busy morning, while Emma organized the bread and jam deliveries for the village, an unexpected visit altered the tranquil atmosphere they had built. Mrs. Wilson, the official gossip of the region, appeared without warning, her small, eager eyes scanning every corner of the yard. "Emma, dear," her shrill voice cut through the morning air, "I brought some fresh eggs and wanted to know how you're managing with your guest." The last word was pronounced with an intonation that made her disapproval clear. Emma felt her stomach turn at the intrusion, but maintained the composure she had learned to cultivate over the years. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Wilson. Gabriel has been a great help on the property." The lady gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh yes, I imagine. But you know, my dear, people have been talking. A young woman alone with a child, sheltering a mysterious man. Not that I mind, of course, but they say he speaks differently. Has strange manners for a common worker." Before Emma could respond, Lily appeared running, excited. "Mommy, Mommy, Uncle Gabe fixed my doll. He even did surgery on her." Mrs. Wilson raised her eyebrows, interested. "Surgery? And since when? Does a rural worker know how to perform surgery on a doll?" It was at that moment that Gabriel appeared, carrying a toolbox. Upon seeing the visitor, his posture subtly changed, becoming more rigid, more controlled. "Good morning, Mum." He greeted politely, but his eyes revealed caution. The old lady examined him from head to toe as if trying to decipher a particularly complex enigma. "You're not from around here, are you? Your accent reminds me of someone I saw on television the other day." "I'm from the north," Gabriel automatically replied, but Emma noticed how his fingers gripped the handle of the toolbox more tightly. "Excuse me, I need to finish some repairs on the roof." After Mrs. Wilson finally departed, leaving a trail of suspicions and insinuations in the air, Emma found Gabriel sitting on the back porch, his gaze lost on the horizon line. "You don't need to tell me anything," she said, sitting beside him. "But I need to know if we're safe. Lily is everything I have in life." Gabriel turned to her, and for the first time since his arrival, Emma saw pure truth in his eyes. "You're safe with me, I promise. What I'm running from, it's not what people might imagine. Sometimes our worst enemies are those who should protect us." That afternoon, as she watched Gabriel teaching Lily how to plant sunflower seeds in the small garden, Emma felt something change within her. It wasn't just the way he dedicated himself to each task, or how his presence had filled empty spaces she didn't even know existed. It was something deeper, more frightening. The distant sound of a helicopter made Gabriel look up at the sky, tense. Lily, absorbed in her gardening task, didn't notice, but Emma did. She saw the momentary fear in his gaze, the way his hands trembled slightly before controlling themselves. "Uncle Gabe," Lily called, oblivious to the tension in the air. "When I grow up, I want to be like you." "Like me?" he asked, surprised. "Why?" "Because you fix broken things. The fence, the roof, my doll, and you even made Mommy smile again. She hasn't smiled like that since Daddy left." Lily's innocent words hit both Emma and Gabriel like lightning. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the gentle wind rustling the leaves of the trees, and in the distance the helicopter that was gradually moving away. It was then that Emma realized, regardless of the secrets Gabriel carried, he had brought something precious to their lives, the ability to believe that some broken things could indeed be fixed. Even if the price of that repair was facing truths they weren't yet ready to reveal. A week after Mrs. Wilson's visit, the routine on the property was interrupted by an unusual event. Emma was organizing the shelves of the small shop she maintained at the entrance of the property when a luxury car, different from the black SUV of previous days, parked in front of the gate. An elegant man, wearing an impeccable suit despite the heat, got out of the vehicle. His Italian shoes raised small clouds of dust as he walked toward the shop. There was something about his smile that sent a chill down Emma's spine. "Good morning, ma'am," he greeted with a studied cordiality. "I'm looking for information about a friend who may be passing through this region. Perhaps you can help me." Before Emma could respond, the man took a photograph from his suit pocket. In it, a completely different Gabriel smiled at the camera. Perfectly arranged hair, finely cut suit, in what appeared to be the rooftop of a corporate building. "His name is Gabriel Bradford," the stranger continued, carefully observing Emma's reactions. "He's an executive who is temporarily away from his responsibilities. We're concerned about his well-being." Emma maintained her neutral expression. Years of survival alone had taught her to mask her emotions. "I'm sorry, but I don't know anyone for like that. As you can see, only rural workers and local merchants pass through here." The man smiled again, but his eyes remained cold. Of course I understand. But if by chance you see him, could you get in touch? I'm Oliver Crawford, financial director of the Bradford Group. It's important that we find him for his own good. He left a card on the counter, his gaze scanning every detail of the property. Beautiful place you have here, ma'am. It would be a shame if something happened to it. The veiled threat in the words made Emma's blood freeze, but she maintained her composure. Thank you for your visit, Mr. Crawford. Have a good day. After the car departed, Emma ran to the barn where Gabriel was working on another of his renovation projects. Seeing her enter in a fluster, he immediately realized something was wrong. What happened? He asked, dropping his tools. Oliver. Crawford was here, she said, observing how his face paled at hearing the name. Who are you really, Gabriel? And why is this man looking for you? Gabriel sat heavily on, a bale of hay running his hands over his face with visible anguish. I should have left earlier. I was being selfish in staying and putting you at risk. No! Emma's voice came out stronger than she intended. Enough running. Tell me the truth. All of it. For a long moment, only the sound of the wind in the barn's cracks filled the silence between them. Finally, Gabriel raised his eyes to meet hers. My real name is Gabriel Bradford. I am, or was, the principal shareholder of the Bradford Group, one of the largest business conglomerates in the country, he began, his voice laden with bitterness. Oliver was more than my financial director. He was my mentor since my parents and since I was left alone. I trusted him like a second father. Emma sat beside him, feeling that story was far from over. What happened? I discovered irregularities, money embezzlement schemes on astronomical proportions. When I confronted Oliver, I realized he was behind it all. But it was too late. He had already prepared a dossier incriminating me, using forged documents and bought witnesses. The afternoon sun entered through the cracks in the barn, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced over them as the story unfolded. He planned everything for years, waiting for the right moment to bring me down and take full control. When I realized I had no way to fight, not at that moment, not against the entire system he had corrupted, I decided to disappear. I needed time to think, to gather evidence. And you ended up here, Emma completed softly. And I found much more than I expected, he responded, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. I found a place where money isn't the only measure of value, where fixing a fence has more meaning than closing $1 million contract, where... The sound of running footsteps interrupted his speech. Lily entered the barn like a hurricane, her eyes shining with excitement. Mommy, Mommy, the teacher said I could bring Uncle Gabe to the school science fair. Can I please? The reality of the situation hit Emma like a punch. This man, who had become so important in their lives, was being hunted by dangerous people, and now she needed to decide, to trust him completely or to protect her daughter from another possible disappointment. Night fell over the property, bringing with it a fine, persistent rain. After putting Lily to bed, Emma found Gabriel sitting on the porch, his gaze lost in the darkness beyond the yard. The afternoon's conversation still weighed between them, loaded with revelations and decisions not taken. She fell asleep asking for you to read her a story tomorrow, Emma said, sitting in the chair beside him, about princes disguised as peasants. Sad smile appeared on Gabriel's face. Seems like she always knew, doesn't it? Children have this ability to see through the masks we wear. Why didn't you go to the police? Or the press? Emma asked, the question that had been tormenting her since the afternoon. Oliver has connections everywhere. I tried once, right at the beginning. The journalist who was investigating the case suffered a mysterious accident. Nothing serious, but the message was clear, he explained, his voice low but filled with contained anger. I needed to disappear completely, gain time to gather concrete evidence. A distant thunder reverberated across the sky, making the porch tremble slightly. Emma pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, not just from the cold. I have a friend, Gabriel continued after a moment of silence. Julian Mason, a lawyer who was also pushed out of the system for trying to expose irregularities. He's working behind the scenes, gathering documents, connecting dots. But it takes time, and Oliver is growing impatient. That's why the black cars have been passing more frequently, Emma concluded, the pieces of the puzzle finally fitting together. Yes. And now that he's found me, Gabriel let the sentence die in the air, but the weight of its implications hung between them like the mist that was beginning to form in the field. Suddenly, a noise coming from Lily's room caught the attention of both. It was just the girl moving during sleep, but the moment of tension revealed something important. The fear they shared was no longer just for themselves. "Tomorrow is the science fair," Emma said after a long silence. "Lily has spent the whole week talking about how you helped her with the medicinal plants project. She's never had anyone besides me to be proud of her like that." "Emma," Gabriel began, his voice choked with emotion. "I should leave. You don't deserve to be dragged into this nightmare." "And that would hurt us less?" she questioned, turning to face him. "You're already part of our lives, Gabriel. Lily, she's already lost a father once, and She hesitated, unspoken words weighing on her heart. A new thunder, closer now, made the house. Lights flicker. In the brief moment of darkness, their hands found each other on the arm of the chair, an unplanned touch that sent waves of electricity through both. "There's an old storage shed at the back of the property," Emma finally said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "No one has gone there for years. We can transform it into an improvised office, a place where you can work with Julian without drawing attention." Gabriel looked at her in surprise. "You're suggesting—" "I'm suggesting we fight," she completed. "Not alone, but together. You taught me that some broken things can be fixed, remember? Maybe it's time to fix more than fences and roofs." The rain increased outside, but they hardly noticed. There was something new growing between them, something stronger than fear and deeper than secrets. It was an unspoken promise, a commitment sealed in the silence of the night. "The fair starts at 9, Emma said, rising. "Lily will want you to wear that blue shirt she says matches your eyes." When she turned to go inside, Gabriel gently held her wrist. "Thank you," he said simply, but his eyes said much more. That night, as the storm raged outside, two hearts wounded by the past began to believe that perhaps, just maybe, the future could be different. And in her room, Lily slept peacefully, dreaming of disguised princes and magical gardens, unaware that her own fairy tale was just beginning. The science fair at the small rural school was set up in the covered courtyard, decorated with colorful posters and improvised tables. Lily, wearing her best dress and with her curls carefully arranged by Emma, animatedly explained her project on medicinal plants to visitors. Beside her, Gabriel, in the blue shirt chosen by the girl, helped demonstrate how to make natural ointments with garden herbs. "And this one," Lily proudly pointed to a small pot with a delicate leaved plant. "Uncle Gabe taught me that it can be used to make a calming tea. He knows all the plants. He even helped Mommy make new jam recipes." Emma observed the scene from afar, her heart divided between pride and concern. It was impossible not to notice how Gabriel fit perfectly there, as if that had always been his place. Even wearing simple clothes and mingling with the other parents and teachers, there was a natural elegance in his gestures that attracted curious glances. "Your husband is very dedicated," Lily's teacher commented, approaching Emma. "It's rare to see a stepfather so involved." Before Emma could correct the misunderstanding, a murmur spread through the courtyard. A tall man, wearing an expensive suit that completely contrasted with the school environment, had just entered the premises. Emma felt her blood freeze as she recognized Oliver Crawford. Gabriel saw him too. For a moment his face lost all color, but he maintained his composure, turning discreetly to continue the project explanation with Lily. The girl, absorbed in her presentation, didn't notice the tension that had settled in the air. Crawford walked slowly among the tables, pretending interest in the school projects, but his astute eyes scanned the environment with purpose. When he finally reached Lily's table, his calculated smile made Emma instinctively approach. "What an interesting project," he commented, his mellifluous voice laden with false cordiality. "You must have had a lot of help to prepare something. So sophisticated." Lily, innocent of the tension around her, smiled radiantly. "Yes, Uncle Gabe helped me. He knows everything about plants and—" "Gabe," Crawford interrupted, his eyes gleaming with contained malice. "What an interesting name. You know, I know someone with that same name, a very important person who is temporarily away from his responsibilities." It was at that moment that Julian Mason, the lawyer Gabriel had mentioned, unexpectedly appeared beside Crawford. His suit was less impeccable than the executive's, but his presence caused a visible impact. "What a coincidence meeting you here, Oliver," Julian casually commented, but there was a weight in his words that made Crawford tense. "I came to visit my niece, you know, the one who studies in the same class as the regional prosecutor's daughter." Crawford's smile faltered for an instant. "Julian, I didn't know you had family in this region." "Oh, I have many contacts around here," the lawyer replied, his tone still casual but his eyes hard as steel, "including some very interested in certain documents that recently came into my hands. Documents about questionable financial transactions." The exchange of glances between the two men was loaded with hidden meanings. Crawford adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture that betrayed his apparent calm. "Well, I must go," he finally said. "Many commitments. It was a pleasure to know about your project, little one." When Crawford left, leaving a trail of tension in the air, Julian approached Gabriel discreetly. "We need to talk," he murmured. "Things are moving faster than we expected." Emma, who had stayed close during the entire interaction, felt her heart tighten. The bubble of safety they had built was about to burst, and she knew difficult decisions would have to be made. "Is Uncle Julian staying for the snack?" Lily innocently asked, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "I made herb cookies with Mommy." The lawyer smiled gently at the girl, but his worried eyes met Gabriel's. "Of course, dear. I wouldn't miss your cookies for anything." While Lily, happily, returned to her project, now explaining to other visitors, the adults exchanged concerned looks. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. After the science fair, when Lily finally fell asleep hugging the participation certificate, she had received Emma, Gabriel, and Julian gathered in the old storage shed at the back of the property. The place had been transformed into an improvised office, with an antique desk and some chairs worn by time. "The documents I obtained are explosive," Julian began, spreading papers on the desk. "Bank transfer records, overpriced contracts, shell, companies. Oliver built a true empire of corruption within the Bradford Group." Gabriel examined the documents carefully, his expression hardening with each page turned. "This explains why he's becoming more aggressive. He must have discovered that you're close to the truth." "It's not just that," Julian continued, his voice dropping a tone. "I found evidence that he had been planning your downfall for years. Gabriel, since your parents, since you took control of the group." Emma, who was standing near the window, observing the night outside, felt a shiver run down her spine. "He was your mentor, wasn't he? The person who was supposed to protect you." "The irony doesn't escape me," Gabriel replied bitterly. "He taught me everything about the corporate world, about how to trust the right people. Meanwhile, he was methodically constructing my destruction." Julian took another set of documents from his briefcase, but he made mistakes. He was so confident in his plan that he left trails. "The problem is that we need to act quickly. After what happened today at the fair, he's going to accelerate his moves." "What exactly are you planning?" Emma asked, approaching the desk. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes showed determination. "Tomorrow there's an extraordinary meeting of the Bradford Group Board," Julian explained. "Oliver intends to use this meeting to officially finalize Gabriel's removal and take full control. But if we can present this evidence before—" "No," Gabriel interrupted, rising abruptly. "It's too risky. He has people everywhere. If something goes wrong—" "It's our best chance," Julian insisted. "I have secure contacts in the prosecutor's office. They're just waiting for the signal to act. With the evidence we've gathered and your testimony—" A noise coming from the house interrupted the discussion. It was just the wind hitting a window. but it was enough to make Emma remember something important. "Lily has a presentation at school tomorrow," she said softly. "She's been rehearsing for weeks. You promised to be there, Gabriel." The silence that followed was heavy. Gabriel looked at the documents spread across the desk, then at the photo of Lily that Emma had placed on the wall of the shed. The girl smiled, holding one of the plants from her project. "Maybe that's it," Julian said thoughtfully. "Oliver would never expect you to show up in such a public place. He must imagine you'll hide, try to act in the shadows. But if I appear at the board meeting..." Gabriel began to understand the plan. "Exactly. While all eyes are on you, my contacts in the prosecutor's office can act. The documents are already prepared, just waiting for the right moment." "Emma," approached Gabriel, gently touching his arm. "You always said that some broken things can be fixed. Maybe it's time to fix your own past." The look they exchanged was loaded with unspoken meanings. There was fear there, but also trust, determination, and something deeper that neither was ready to name. "Lily's presentation is at 9, Gabriel finally said. "The board meeting is at 11. There's time." Julian began organizing the documents, a small smile appearing on his tired face. "I'll prepare everything. Tomorrow, Oliver Crawford will learn that some betrayals have a high price." When Julian departed, Gabriel and Emma remained in the shed, the silence between them filled only by the sound of the wind in the trees outside. Tomorrow would bring changes, risks, possible losses, but it also brought the promise of justice, of new beginnings. "I'll prepare some coffee," Emma finally said. "Something tells me it's going to be a long night of preparation." "Emma," Gabriel called when she was at the door, "thank you for everything." She smiled, that smile that had become his light in recent times. "Just promise you'll come back. Lily, we have gotten used to having you around." The unspoken words hung in the air between them, more eloquent than any declaration. Tomorrow would be a decisive day, but at that moment in that small shed transformed into headquarters, there was hope. The morning dawned laden with expectations. Emma woke before the sun, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared coffee. The house was silent except for the occasional sound of footsteps upstairs, Lily getting ready for her presentation, humming carelessly. Gabriel appeared in the kitchen already dressed in a suit that Julian had brought the night before. The elegant attire seemed to awaken an old posture in him, as if the weight of his responsibilities was settling back on his shoulders. However, there was something different in his eyes, a determination that wasn't born in corporate offices, but from the days spent on this simple land. "You look like a real prince now," Lily exclaimed upon seeing him, coming down the stairs in her presentation dress. "But I prefer when you wear work clothes for the garden." The innocent comment brought smiles to the tense faces of the adults. Gabriel knelt to be at the girl's height, adjusting the bow on her dress. "You know, Lily, sometimes we need to dress differently on the outside, but what matters is who we are on the inside." "Like in fairy tales," she asked, her eyes shining, "where the prince disguises himself as a peasant to discover true love." Emma, who was watching the scene while finishing preparing breakfast, felt her heart tighten. How to explain to a child that sometimes fairy tales can have moments of fear and uncertainty before the happy ending? Breakfast was served in a silence heavy with unspoken words. Lily, absorbed in her own world of expectations about the presentation, didn't notice the tension hanging in the air. Her parents, because that's how she already saw them in her heart, exchanged meaningful glances while she chatted about her performance. "Are you really going to use that song you taught me, Uncle Gabe?" Lily asked between bites of her toast. "Of course," he replied, smiling. "That song about hope and new beginnings, it couldn't be more perfect." The sound of a car approaching made everyone freeze for a moment, but it was just Julian, arriving earlier than agreed. He entered the kitchen carrying a leather briefcase and a serious countenance. "Uncle Julian!" Lily ran to hug him. "Are you going to see my presentation too?" "I wouldn't miss it for anything, little one," he replied, his expression softening momentarily. Then, turning to the adults, "We need to review some details before leaving." While Lily went upstairs to get her backpack, the three quickly gathered on the porch. The morning dew still glistened on the grass, creating an almost unreal scene of tranquility. "The prosecutors are positioned," Julian informed in a low voice. "As soon as you enter the boardroom, Gabriel, they'll be ready to act. But we need to be precise with the timing. And if something goes wrong..." Emma couldn't contain the question that tormented her. "Nothing will go wrong," Gabriel affirmed, but his hand instinctively sought hers, intertwining their fingers. "I'll see Lily's presentation, then I'll go straight to the meeting. Oliver doesn't expect me to appear, much less that I've gathered evidence against him." "He's dangerous," Emma insisted. "You said yourself he has people everywhere." "That's exactly why we need to act now," Julian intervened. "The longer we wait, the more time he has to erase trails and strengthen his position." The sound of Lily's footsteps coming down the stairs interrupted the conversation. She appeared carrying her backpack and a small guitar, the same one Gabriel had used to teach her the song for her presentation. "I'm ready," she announced cheerfully. "Let's go." The adults exchanged one last meaningful look before heading to their cars. Julian would follow in his own vehicle, ready to provide backup if necessary. Emma, Gabriel, and Lily would go together, like the family they had become. During the journey to the school, Lily hummed her song, oblivious to the tension filling the car. Gabriel drove in silence, his eyes occasionally meeting Emma's in the rearview mirror. There was so much to be said, so much to be promised, but time seemed to slip like sand between fingers. When they arrived at the school, the courtyard was already full of excited parents and students for the event. But it was a black car, discreetly parked across the street, that caught Gabriel's attention. "He's already watching us," he murmured to Julian, who had just joined them. "Let him watch," the lawyer replied in the same tone. "The more confident he is, the greater his surprise." "Whitby." Lily, holding Gabriel and Emma's hands, pulled them toward the school entrance, her contagious energy momentarily driving away the shadows hanging over them. At that moment, they were just a family on their way to a school presentation. But the gears of destiny were already in motion, and the next few hours would change their lives forever. The school auditorium was decorated with paper flowers and colorful banners made by the students themselves. Lily, sitting among her classmates in the front row, kept looking back, searching for Gabriel and Emma in the audience. They had chosen strategic seats, close enough for the girl to see them, but with easy access to the exit. The presentation began with the younger children reciting poems about nature. Gabriel discreetly consulted his watch every few minutes. Just over an hour remained until the board meeting. Julian, seated a few rows behind, kept his eyes fixed on the auditorium entrance, monitoring any suspicious movement. Finally, it was Lily's turn. She took the stage carrying her small guitar, adjusted the microphone with adorable seriousness, and began to strum the instrument's strings. The melody Gabriel had taught filled the environment, a song about hope and new beginnings, about finding light even in the darkest moments. "When the sun hides behind gray clouds," she sang with her crystalline voice, "there's still light inside us," and Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. The lyrics, which Gabriel had adapted especially for Lily, seemed to speak directly about their own story, about losses, new beginnings, and the strength to move forward. That's when a movement at the auditorium entrance caught her attention. Oliver Crawford had just entered, accompanied by two men in suits. His eyes swept the audience until they found Gabriel, and a cold smile formed on his lips. "He wouldn't do anything here," Julian whispered, discreetly approaching. "There are too many witnesses." But Gabriel wasn't so sure. He knew his former mentor too well to underestimate him. On stage, Lily continued her presentation, her sweet voice contrasting with the growing tension in the environment. "In the darkest nights when fear surrounds us," she sang, "just a small ray of hope is needed." It was at that moment that Oliver began to move along the side of the auditorium, approaching the stage. Gabriel felt his heart racing. He wasn't there to confront him. He was there for Lily. Without thinking twice, he stood up and began to move in the same direction, parallel to Oliver. Emma, sensing the danger, felt her blood freeze. On stage, Lily was completely absorbed in her music, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "To find the way back home," the girl's voice echoed through the auditorium. Sometimes we need to get lost. First, Gabriel reached the side of the stage first, positioning himself to stand between Oliver and Lily. Their gazes met, years of betrayed trust and bitterness condensed into a single moment. "She has nothing to do with this," Gabriel said, in a low but firm voice. "On the contrary," Oliver replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "She has everything to do with it. You found a new family, didn't you? While running from your responsibilities, you built a little fairy tale for yourself." On stage, Lily was reaching the end of her song. "Because true love always finds its Friday." It was then that Julian appeared beside Oliver, his phone in hand. "I just received an interesting message from the prosecutor's office," he said calmly. "It seems some very revealing documents about your financial activities have just reached their hands." Oliver's expression changed imperceptibly. His eyes narrowed, quickly calculating his options. "The board meeting starts in 40 minutes, Julian continued. "I imagine you have a lot to explain before it begins." Applause exploded in the auditorium. Lily had finished her presentation. She made a small bow, her eyes immediately searching for Gabriel and Emma in the audience. Upon seeing them near the stage, her face lit up with a radiant smile. "This isn't over," Oliver murmured, retreating toward the exit. "You have no idea what I've set in motion." "No," Gabriel replied, watching as Lily descended from the stage, running in his direction. "You have no idea what I found here, and what I'm willing to fight for." Emma reached them at that moment, enveloping Lily in a protective hug. The girl, feeling the tension in the air, looked confused between the adults. "I did everything right," she said, her voice suddenly small and insecure. "Did you like it, Uncle Gabe?" He knelt to be at her height, his smile genuine despite the adrenaline still running through his veins. "It was perfect, Princess, exactly as we rehearsed." As Oliver hurriedly left the auditorium, followed by his men, Julian checked his phone once more. "The prosecutors are on their way to the group headquarters. It's time." Gabriel looked at Emma and Lily, his heart divided between duty and the desire to stay. But before he could say anything, Emma held his hand. "Go," she said softly. "Finish what needs to be finished. We'll be waiting for you." "Do you promise you'll come back soon?" Lily asked, her eyes large and hopeful. "I promise," he replied, kissing the girl's forehead. "After all, every story needs a happy ending, doesn't it?" The imposing Bradford Group building rose like a tower of glass and steel against the city sky. Gabriel, seated in the passenger seat of Julian's car, observed his former home with a mixture of nostalgia and determination. How many times had he walked through those doors, confident in his role as a leader? Now he returned not as an heir, but as someone who had found a purpose greater than fortunes and power. "The prosecutors are already positioned," Julian informed, parking the car. "We also have strategic journalists on standby. Oliver won't be able to cover up the scandal this time." In the building's lobby, employees stopped their activities upon recognizing Gabriel. Whispers and surprised looks followed him as he walked toward the elevators. Some even attempted smiles. Not everyone had bought the story of his supposed disgrace. "Mr. Bradford," a familiar voice called him. It was Megan, his former secretary, running toward him with teary eyes. "I knew you would return. Things haven't been the same since—" "Megan," he gently interrupted her, "I need you to do me one last favor. There's a folder in my old office hidden behind the Van Gogh painting. You know which one." The secretary nodded, immediately understanding. Mr. Crawford never managed to find it even after turning the entire office upside down. "Bring it to the boardroom, please, and Megan, thank you for keeping your faith in me." In the elevator, ascending to the top floor, Gabriel allowed his thoughts to briefly return to Emma and Lily. The image of them at the school, Lily with her guitar and Emma with that look of tranquil strength, gave him the courage necessary for what was to come. "Remember," Julian said as the elevator doors opened, "you're no longer alone in this fight." The boardroom was almost full when they entered. The buzz of conversations ceased immediately, all heads turning toward the door. Oliver, who was standing at the head of the table, dropped the folder he was holding. "Gabriel," he managed to say, quickly regaining his composure. "What a pleasant surprise, although a bit late for the meeting that will decide your permanent removal." "It's never too late for the truth, Oliver," Gabriel replied, his voice calm but firm. "Or should I say it's never too late to expose a betrayal?" Murmurs ran through the room. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, feeling the growing tension in the air. "Betrayal?" Oliver laughed, but there was an almost imperceptible tremor in his voice. "The only traitor here is you, who abandoned your responsibilities, who ran like a coward when things got difficult." "No, Oliver, I didn't run from responsibilities." Gabriel advanced through the room, each step calculated. "I ran from your trap, and while you thought I was hiding, I was actually discovering who I really am." Megan chose that moment to enter the room, carrying the folder Gabriel had requested. Oliver visibly paled upon recognizing it. "Gentlemen, you must be wondering why I called this extraordinary meeting." Oliver tried to regain control of the situation, but his voice now betrayed his nervousness. "Actually," Julian intervened, "the prosecutors who are arriving at this moment have some very interesting questions about certain financial transactions." As if on cue, the doors to the room opened again. Two prosecutors, accompanied by police officers, entered with firm steps. "Oliver Crawford," one of them announced, "we have a warrant for your preventive arrest and for the seizure of documents related to financial fraud and embezzlement." Chaos ensued in the room. Board members rose, some trying to distance themselves from the scene, others watching in astonishment as Oliver was surrounded by the officers. "You don't understand," Oliver shouted at Gabriel as he was being handcuffed. "I built this empire. I transformed the Bradford Group into what it is today. You were just a spoiled boy who you planned to destroy from the beginning," Gabriel completed, his voice laden with an old sadness. "But you know what your biggest mistake was, Oliver. It wasn't underestimating my intelligence or my determination. It was not realizing that some things are more important than money and power." At that moment, his phone vibrated with a message. From Emma, a photo of Lily proudly holding her presentation certificate, her smile illuminating the screen. Below, a simple message. "We're waiting for you to come home." Home. A word that had a completely different meaning for him a few months ago. Now it no longer represented marble corridors or meeting rooms, but a simple porch where breakfast was served with love, a barn transformed into a place of confidences, and the sound of a child's laughter echoing across the field. The hours that followed Oliver's arrest were a whirlwind of testimonies, documents, and statements to the press. The sun was already setting when Gabriel finally managed to leave the Bradford Group building, exhausted but at peace. Julian had stayed behind, coordinating the final legal details with the prosecutors. "Are you sure about this?" his lawyer had asked before they parted, referring to the decision Gabriel had just announced to the board. "Absolutely," he replied, a serene smile on his face. "The Bradford Group needs a new direction, someone who doesn't carry the weight of the past. I'll maintain my shares, but as a silent investor. My place is no longer here." The journey back to Emma's small property never seemed so long. Each mile that left the city behind was like removing a weight from his shoulders. The lights of the skyscrapers gave way to the brilliance of stars, the noise of traffic being replaced by the welcoming silence of the countryside. When he finally spotted the house, his heart raced at seeing the lights on and a small jumping figure on the porch. Lily, still wearing her presentation dress, was jumping and waving frantically. "He's back, Mummy! The prince is back!" Her joyful voice cut through the night as Gabriel parked the car. Emma appeared at the door, her eyes shining with contained tears. She had followed the events through the news, but seeing Gabriel there, safe and sound, was different from any news report. "Did you succeed?" she asked when he climbed the porch steps. In response, Gabriel took from his suit pocket a small object, the key to his office at the Bradford Group. "I achieved much more than that," he said, handing the key to Lily. "I found my true home." "So you're staying?" the girl asked, her large eyes full of hope. "If your mother allows," he replied, turning to Emma, "not as Gabriel Bradford, the heir to an empire, but as Gabe, the man who learned the true value of simple things." Emma stepped forward, her hands finding his, And what will you do now? First, I'm going to help transform that unproductive field into something special. I have some knowledge about sustainable agriculture that might be useful. He smiled. Then I thought about expanding the jam production. Your recipes are too good to remain restricted to just the village. And will you teach me more songs? Lily interrupted, hugging the legs of both. All the songs you want, Princess, Gabriel replied, bending down to pick her up. And I'll also teach you about the stars, about plants, about love? The girl completed innocently, making the adults blush. That, Emma replied for him, her fingers intertwining with Gabriel's, is something we're learning together. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, not without making Gabriel promise 3 times that he would be there in the morning, they stayed on the porch watching the stars. The silence between them was comfortable, filled only by the sound of crickets and the gentle wind in the trees. You know, Gabriel finally said, when I ran away that night I thought I was losing everything. I didn't imagine I was running toward everything that really mattered. Emma snuggled closer to him, her head finding a perfect place on his shoulder. Sometimes we need to get lost to find our true path. Like in Lily's song, he smiled, remembering the morning's presentation. Like in our story, she softly corrected. The future opened before them like a fertile field waiting to be cultivated. There would be challenges, of course. Life is never a perfect fairy tale. But now they had something more valuable than any fortune. They had each other, they had Lily, and they had the certainty that some encounters are written in the stars, long before they happen. The next day, the sun would rise as always, finding Gabriel helping in the garden, Emma preparing her jams, and Lily filling the house with her songs and laughter. And so it would be from then on, not a life of luxuries and power, but an existence rich in love, simplicity, and truth. Because sometimes the true treasure isn't in the vaults of a business empire, but in a child's smile, in the warmth of a sincere embrace, and in the peace of finally finding your place in the world. In the weeks following Oliver's arrest, life on the small property adjusted to a new normality. News of the scandal at the Bradford Group had reached the village, and suddenly, everyone seemed to have an opinion about the disguised prince living among them. Mrs. Wilson, of course, wasted no time visiting every house in the region, boasting about being the first to suspect there was something different about that young man. The village buzzed with stories, increasingly elaborate, about how the millionaire had hidden there. But inside Emma's property, life followed its own rhythm, sweeter and truer than any local gossip. On a particularly pleasant morning while Lily was at school, Gabriel surprised Emma with an unexpected proposal. How about transforming that unproductive field into a berry plantation? He suggested during breakfast. Your jams are already famous in the region. Imagine being able to produce your own raw materials. Emma lowered her coffee cup, studying the face of the man before her. That would require considerable investment. Irrigation, seedlings, soil preparation. Luckily, he smiled, taking her hand across the table, I know someone who understands a little about investments and a lot about fresh starts. Gabriel, she hesitated, I don't want you to use your money here. I don't want people to think that I bought my place in this family, he completed softly. Emma, what we've built here is priceless. Money is just a tool, like that old shovel in the barn. What matters is what we do with it. At that moment, the sound of a car approaching caught the attention of both. It was Julian, driving his now less impeccable car, accustomed to the region's dirt roads. Good morning, lovebirds, he joked, entering the kitchen without ceremony. Since the events at the Bradford Group, the lawyer had become a frequent and cherished visitor. I brought the seedlings you asked for, he continued, placing some papers on the table, and also the cooperative documents. Everything is ready to start whenever you want. Emma picked up the papers, her eyes widening as she saw the project details. It wasn't just a berry plantation, it was a complete agricultural revitalization plan, including a cooperative system that would benefit other small producers in the region. This is impressive, she murmured, flipping through the pages. But how are we going to manage something so big? Together, Gabriel replied simply, "as we've been doing so far." Julian observed the scene with a knowing smile. "You know, Emma, when I first found Gabriel, hiding and planning his revenge against Oliver, I never imagined I'd see him like this, discussing fruit planting and irrigation systems." "People change," she replied, her gaze meeting Gabriel's with affection. "No," Julian corrected, "people find their true selves, and sometimes they need a little push from fate or a broken fence for that to happen." The rest of the morning was dedicated to planning the project details. Gabriel and Julian discussed technical and legal aspects, while Emma added her practical knowledge about the land and the region's climate. It was a harmonious dance of different expertises, each contributing their part to form something larger. "Mummy, Uncle Gabe!" Lily's voice sounded from the porch. She had returned from school early, carrying something in her hands. "Look what the teacher gave me." It was a fairy tale book, but not just any one. This had been adapted with modern stories, including one that talked about a businessman who discovered the true value of life after getting lost in the countryside. "The teacher said she was inspired by our story," Lily explained excitedly. "She wants us to present it at the cultural fair next month, can we?" The adults exchanged amused looks. Their story, which had begun with so much mystery and apprehension, had transformed into an inspiring tale for the community. "Of course we can, Princess," Gabriel replied, picking her up. "But do you know what the best part of our story is?" "What?" she asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. "That it's just beginning," he said, extending his hand for Emma to join the hug. Julian observed the scene with misty eyes, discreetly taking his phone from his pocket to record the moment. There was the living proof that sometimes the greatest fortunes are not made of money, but of moments like that, simple, true, and filled with love. And as the afternoon sun gilded the fields around them, casting elongated shadows across the yard, the small family remained united on the porch, planning not just a berry plantation, but an entire future of possibilities. A future that had begun with a broken fence and a lost heart seeking direction. The berry field project advanced rapidly, transforming the formerly unproductive field into a veritable Garden of Eden. The first seedlings were already showing signs of life, small green sprouts promising an abundant future. The cooperative, now fully established, had inspired other farmers in the region to modernize their cultivation techniques. On a particularly busy Saturday, while Gabriel explained modern cultivation techniques to a group of local farmers, Emma watched from the porch, amazed at the transformation that had occurred in their lives. The man who had arrived disoriented and frightened at her fence now radiated a serene confidence, born not from corporate power, but from true purpose. "He's different now, isn't he?" Julian commented, joining her on the porch. The lawyer had become a constant presence on the property, more like a family friend than a legal consultant. "We all are," Emma replied, smiling as she watched Lily running between the seedlings, her small notebook in hand, recording the growth of the plants like a little scientist. "Mommy!" the girl shouted, running toward her. "Look what I discovered! The raspberries we planted last week already have sprouts, and Uncle Gabe said when they grow, we'll make special jam for our wedding." Emma choked on her coffee, while Julian tried to disguise a laugh. "Wedding?" she managed to ask. "Oops!" Lily covered her mouth with her hands. "It was a surprise. Uncle Gabe will be mad at me now." In the field, Gabriel had noticed the commotion on the porch and was approaching, curious. Seeing the expressions of the adults and Lily's guilty face, it wasn't hard to guess what had happened. "I think someone revealed my secret," he said, feigning severity, but his eyes sparkled with amusement. "Sorry, Uncle Gabe," Lily murmured, "but I'm so happy. I'll have a real family, like in the stories." Julian discreetly took Lily by the hand. "Come on, little one. Let's see if we can find more sprouts to record in your notebook." When they were alone on the porch, Gabriel approached Emma, taking her hands in his. "This isn't how I planned to make the proposal," he admitted. "I had a whole special moment prepared with the sunset and—" "Since you arrived here," Emma interrupted him, her eyes misty, "nothing has gone as planned, and you know what? That's exactly why it worked out so well." The smile that illuminated Gabriel's face could have outshone the sun itself. Delicately, he took a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside, a simple but elegant ring with a small blue stone reminiscent of the color of his eyes. "It's not $1 million ring," he said softly, "because I've learned that the most valuable things in life can't be bought." "It's perfect," Emma whispered, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. From the field, they heard Lily's excited voice. "Did she say yes? Can I tell everyone at school?" The adults laughed, and Gabriel gestured for the girl to come over. She ran to them, Julian right behind, and the four embraced. A family that destiny had woven with unlikely threads of love and redemption. "You know what this means?" Lily asked, her eyes shining with excitement. "That now Uncle Gabe will be my real dad, and we can plant more raspberries and make more jam and build many stories together," Gabriel completed, kissing the top of the girl's head. Julian cleared his throat, disguising his emotion. "Well, I think this calls for a celebration. How about a barbecue on Sunday? We can invite the cooperative people. Do something simple." "Simple is perfect," Emma replied, squeezing Gabriel's hand. "That's exactly how we want our life." That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, not without first making elaborate plans for the wedding, including a crown of wildflowers she herself wanted to make, Gabriel and Emma stayed on the porch, their favorite place for important conversations. "Are you sure," she asked softly, "about trading your life of luxury for this?" Her gesture encompassed the simple property, the developing field, the rural life. "Emma," he replied, pulling her closer, "when I arrived here, I was running away. Now, for the first time in my life, I'm running towards something real, true, much more valuable than any corporate empire." The gentle night breeze carried the scent of the first flowers from the orchard, a promise of future fruits. Above them, the stars shone with a clarity that no skyscraper could offer. And in each other's arms, two hearts that had known loneliness finally found their place of belonging. The months leading up to the wedding brought an even deeper transformation to the property. The berry field had become a true spectacle, with orderly rows of plants laden with raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries. The cooperative, now fully established, had inspired other farmers in the region to modernize their cultivation techniques. On a particularly busy morning, Emma supervised the first major harvest of fruit while Lily ran between the bushes, her floral dress stained with the juice of ripe raspberries she occasionally stopped to taste. "Mommy, look how many!" she exclaimed, raising her small basket already overflowing with berries. "We're going to make enough jam to serve at the entire wedding?" Gabriel, who was coordinating a group of cooperative workers at the other end of the field, couldn't suppress a smile hearing the girl's enthusiasm. The wedding had become Lily's favorite subject, and she insisted on participating in every detail of the planning. The first batch has already been set aside for the new gourmet jam line. Megan, Gabriel's former secretary, now manager of the commercial expansion project, informed as she approached with her clipboard. She had left the Bradford group to join the venture, exchanging high heels for field boots with surprising satisfaction. "Are the labels ready?" Emma asked, adjusting the straw hat that protected her from the sun. "Just arrived," Megan smiled, showing a sample. The design was elegant but rustic, with the name Countryside Jams, the Carter Bradford family, in delicate lettering. Emma touched the label with gentle fingers, still marveling at how her small homemade production had transformed into a thriving business that benefited the entire community. "I knew I'd find you all here," Julian's cheerful voice sounded as he approached carrying a folder. "The cooperative expansion documents are ready for signatures, and I brought a surprise too." He took a newspaper from the folder, whose headline made Emma catch her breath. "Former executive transforms rural region with innovative sustainable agriculture project." The photo showed Gabriel among the berry fields, Lily on his shoulders, both smiling at the camera. "The press won't stop calling," Julian commented. "They want to do a special feature on how the Prince of Agribusiness found his true calling in the countryside." "Prince of Agribusiness?" Gabriel laughed, joining the group after finishing his instructions to the workers. I think I prefer Lily's uncle of silences. Father of silences now, the girl corrected, running to hug his legs. Since Gabriel had officially initiated the adoption process, she made a point of reminding them of the change whenever possible. The sound of more cars approaching caught the group's attention. It was the decoration team, arriving for another meeting about the wedding preparations. Emma had insisted on something simple, but news of the engagement between the former heir of the Bradford Group and the rural producer had spread, attracting more attention than they would have liked. "Don't worry," Gabriel whispered to Emma, noticing her apprehensive expression. "No matter what they want to do, our wedding will be exactly as we planned." And it was true. Despite all the suggestions for grandiose parties in luxury hotels, they had maintained their decision. The ceremony would be right there, in the Berry field, with guests seated on hay bales decorated with wildflowers, and the reception would be a large community lunch, where Emma's jams would have a place of honor. "Mommy!" Lily called, pulling at the hem of Emma's dress. "Can I show the decorator the flower crown I made? And I also want to show where we're going to put the lights, just like those at Christmas." "Of course, sweetheart," Emma smiled, watching as her daughter ran toward the newcomers, her contagious enthusiasm making everyone smile. "She's radiant," Julian commented. "I've never seen a child so happy about a wedding." "It's not just the wedding," Gabriel replied, his eyes following the girl with love. "It's the family that's finally complete." Megan discreetly wiped away a tear. "Who would have thought, right? When you disappeared from the Bradford Group, I thought you had lost everything, but actually, I found everything," Gabriel completed, putting his arm around Emma's shoulders. "Sometimes we need to lose what we think is important, to discover what really matters." The rest of the morning was dedicated to preparations. While the decoration team discussed arrangements and lighting, the cooperative workers continued the harvest, creating a peculiar symphony of activities that perfectly reflected the fusion of worlds their lives had become. In the late afternoon, when everyone had departed, the family gathered on the porch for their daily ritual of watching the sunset. Lily, exhausted but happy, dozed in Gabriel's lap, still holding some raspberries in her small hands, stained red. The wedding day dawned, with a golden light that seemed to bless the property. The berry field had been transformed into a rustic fairy tale setting, with arches of wildflowers marking the path to the improvised altar, and small lights hung between the rows of plants, ready to shine when dusk came. Lily had been in a flurry since the early morning hours, running from one side to the other in her flower girl dress, making sure everything was exactly as she had planned. The flower crown she had made herself to wear rested carefully on her bed, along with a decorated basket where she would carry the wild rose petals. "Nervous?" Julian asked Emma, finding her in the kitchen where, even on her wedding day, she had insisted on personally checking the last batches of raspberry cookies. "Strangely, no," she replied, smiling as she adjusted the apron over her robe. "It feels like all of this was already written in the stars, you know." In the old barn, transformed into an area for guests to prepare, Gabriel adjusted his tie in front of an improvised mirror. He had opted for a light blue suit, less formal than those he used to wear in his previous life, but elegant in its own way. "The most handsome groom I've ever seen," Megan declared, entering the barn with some last-minute decorations. "But I confess I prefer you in boots and a hat tending to the plantations." "So do I," he laughed, running a hand through his carefully combed hair. "But today is a special day." As the morning progressed, guests began to arrive. They were an interesting mix: local farmers in their best attire, some executives who had remained loyal to Gabriel after his departure from the Bradford Group, and various village residents who had become an important part of their lives. Mrs. Wilson, of course, arrived early, wearing an extravagant hat and declaring to all who would listen how she always knew there was something special about that mysterious young man. Close to noon, when the sun was high but a gentle breeze refreshed the environment, the music began to play. It wasn't the traditional wedding march, but an acoustic version of the song Lily had presented at that science fair, specially arranged. Savor the occasion. The girl entered first, scattering petals with an adorable seriousness in her role, her crown of wildflowers shining under the sun. When she reached the altar, she proudly positioned herself beside Gabriel, holding his hand as if wanting to ensure he wouldn't run away. And then Emma appeared. Her dress was simple yet elegant, with small embroidered flowers reminiscent of those growing in her garden. In her hands, she carried a bouquet of wildflowers and raspberry branches, a combination that perfectly represented the union of their lives. Gabriel felt his breath catch at the sight of her. There stood the woman who had taken him in at his most vulnerable moment, who had seen beyond his masks and status, who had taught him the true meaning of wealth. The ceremony was conducted by a local justice of the peace, who had incorporated elements of Lily's stories into his speech, talking about disguised princes and true love that transcends appearances. And now, the justice smiled after the rings were exchanged, I have the pleasure of presenting to you the Carter Bradford family. Lily was the first to applaud, jumping for joy as the newlyweds kissed. The lights between the plants automatically turned on, creating a magical effect even in the daylight. The celebration that followed was exactly as they had planned. Tables scattered across the field, people serving themselves dishes lovingly, prepared by the community, live music played by local artists, and of course a special table dedicated to Emma's jams. Each jar decorated with a small story about how that specific recipe had come about. Look at this, Julian commented to Megan, observing the party. Who would have thought that that frightened man, who sought me out months ago, planning his revenge, would find something much greater than justice? He found his true purpose, Megan replied, smiling as she watched Gabriel twirl with Lily on the improvised dance floor, and in the process helped an entire community find theirs too. When the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, the guests gathered for a special moment, the launch of the family's new gourmet jams. Each person received a small jar as a souvenir, with a label that told not just the ingredients, but also a piece of the love story that had transformed that piece of land into a place of hope and renewal. To the Prince of Silences and the Queen of Jams, someone proposed a toast, making everyone laugh and raise their glasses. Emma and Gabriel looked at each other, their hearts overflowing with happiness. Lily, still with her flower crown now slightly askew after so much dancing, hugged them around the waist. Now, she declared with satisfaction, our story is complete. No, my princess, Gabriel gently corrected, kissing the top of her head. Our story is just beginning. The first year after the wedding brought changes that not even the most optimistic could have predicted. Emma's small jam production had transformed into a nationally respected brand, with orders coming from all over the country. The berry field, once an arid terrain, was now a reference in sustainable agriculture, receiving technical visits from farmers from various regions. On an autumn morning, while the sun still played hide-and-seek with the mist, Emma found Gabriel sitting on the porch, absorbed in some papers. Lily, now 8 years old, slept peacefully after a night of stories and plans for the future orchard. She insisted on calling her Enchanted Garden. More reports from the cooperative? Emma asked, handing him a cup of coffee. Actually, he smiled, pulling her to sit beside him. These are the final adoption documents for Lily. Julian just emailed them. All that's left is our signature. Emma felt her heart race. Although Lily had considered Gabriel her father for a long time, the official adoption was a moment they all eagerly awaited. She'll be thrilled, Emma whispered, leaning on her husband's shoulder. Last night, while you were at the cooperative meeting, she asked me if she could start using Carter Bradford at school. And what did you answer? That she's always been a Carter Bradford in her heart. The paper will just confirm what we already know. The sound of small footsteps interrupted the conversation. Lily appeared at the porch door, still in pajamas, her curls more rebellious than ever. Are you having a meeting without me? She asked, feigning indignation. It was her new favorite word, meeting, since she had begun participating in the youth cooperative gatherings that Gabriel had created for the local farmers' children. Actually, Gabriel smiled, picking her up, we were waiting for you to wake up for a very special meeting. As they explained about the adoption documents, Lily's eyes filled with tears of happiness. "So now everyone will know that you're my real dad?" "I've always been your real dad, Princess," Gabriel replied, his voice choked with emotion. "This is just for the rest of the world to know too." The moment was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. It was Megan, arriving earlier than usual, carrying an excited expression that suggested important news. "Sorry about the hour," she said, hurriedly climbing the porch steps. "But I had to show this to you personally." She extended a business magazine. On the cover, a photo of the family in the berry field with the headline, "From Corporate to Country, How a Love Story Revolutionized Family Agribusiness." "The article is incredible," Megan continued, leafing through the magazine. "It talks about how your project is inspiring other communities to develop similar cooperatives. We've already received 5 invitations to implement the model in other regions." "Uncle Julian is going to go crazy," Lily exclaimed, taking the magazine to examine the photos. "Look, Mommy, they included the recipe for your award-winning jam." It was true. The magazine had dedicated a special insert to the history of the jams, from Emma's first homemade recipes to the current gourmet line that was revolutionizing the artisanal product market. "And there's more," Megan added, pulling another document from her briefcase. "The State University wants to establish a sustainable agriculture research center here. They were impressed with the results of our ecological irrigation system." Gabriel and Emma exchanged meaningful looks. The project that had begun as a way to give new life to the unproductive field was transforming into something much bigger than they were. "We can make a research greenhouse near the creek," Lily suggested, already completely involved in the idea, "and plant more types of fruit and make more jam recipes and first have breakfast," Emma laughed, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "Then we can plan world domination through gourmet jams." The comment provoked laughter in everyone, but there was an underlying truth there. What they had built together, not just the family but the entire project, was truly changing lives. That afternoon, while Lily proudly showed the magazine to her colleagues from the youth cooperative, Gabriel and Emma walked through the berry field, inspecting the new sprouts that promised an exceptional harvest. "Sometimes I wonder," Emma said softly, "if all this would have happened if you hadn't stumbled on our fence that rainy night." "It wasn't a stumble," Gabriel replied, stopping to pick a perfectly ripe raspberry. "It was destiny guiding me to where I was meant to be." The afternoon sun bathed the field in a golden light, making the fruits shine like jewels among the leaves. In the distance, they could hear the laughter of the children in the youth cooperative, the sound of workers preparing the soil for new plantings, life pulsing in every corner of that place that had become much more than a simple rural property. News of the research center installation stirred the entire region. Within weeks, the small property that had once been known only for its artisanal jams was transformed into a hub of agricultural innovation. Researchers, students, and farmers from different parts of the country began to arrive, bringing with them new ideas and perspectives. Lily, more than anyone, was fascinated by the changes. Her enchanted garden now had a special corner in the EMI research project where she could conduct her own scientific experiments under the caring supervision of the researchers. "Daddy, look what Dr. Laura taught me," she exclaimed one afternoon, running to meet Gabriel, who was returning from a meeting with new partners. In her hands, she carried a small, portable microscope connected to a tablet. "We can see the plant cells. It's like magic, but scientific." Gabriel smiled, picking up his daughter despite her protests that she was too big for that now. "And what else did you discover today, scientist?" "That each type of fruit has different cells, and Dr. Laura said we can use this to create even better jam recipes. I've already told Mommy and she let me help with the tests." Emma, who was watching the scene from the door of the improvised laboratory, couldn't help but marvel at how their lives had changed. The small kitchen where she once prepared her jams had been transformed into a research and development space where tradition and innovation met to create something extraordinary. Mrs. Carter Bradford, one of the researchers, called her, bringing her back to the present. "The test results with the new raspberry varieties have arrived. You need to see this." The data was impressive. The sustainable cultivation techniques they had developed, combined with the traditional varieties Emma had always used, were producing fruits with superior nutritional properties and exceptional flavor. This will revolutionize not just jam production, the researcher explained excitedly, but the whole concept of sustainable family farming. That night during dinner, which now happened at a larger table to accommodate the expanded family of researchers and collaborators who frequently joined them, Julian arrived with more news. The project has been selected to represent the United States at an international congress on sustainable agriculture, he announced, barely containing his excitement. They want you to present the cooperative model and the research program. International? Lily's eyes widened. Does that mean we're going to travel? Not just that, Julian continued, smiling at his goddaughter, a title he had officially received after the adoption. They want you to present your Enchanted Garden project in the youth section of the Congress. The news was received with applause and congratulations. Megan, who had just arrived with some more documents, joined the celebration. And there's more, she added, her eyes shining. I just received confirmation. The university has approved the creation of a scholarship program for children of cooperative farmers. The program will be called the Lily Carter Bradford Scholarship. The girl almost fell off her chair with excitement. A scholarship with my name? But why? Because it was you, Princess, Gabriel explained, his voice filled with pride, who taught us to see magic in science and science in magic. Your Enchanted Garden inspired the entire research project. Emma watched the scene with a heart overflowing with love and gratitude. From her small kitchen, where she struggled to support her daughter alone, a project had emerged that now transformed lives and inspired dreams. Later, when the house finally quieted and Lily slept dreaming of microscopes and enchanted gardens, Emma and Gabriel sat on their favorite porch. The berry field, now illuminated by soft lights marking the research areas, seemed even more magical at night. You know what's most incredible? Emma asked, intertwining her fingers with her husband's. That in the end, it wasn't the berries or the jams that made all this happen. It was love. The love you had to take me in that night, Gabriel agreed. Lily's love that never doubted I could be her father, the love we built together, and that infected an entire community. The gentle night breeze carried the scent of ripe fruit and wildflowers, now mixed with the characteristic smell of laboratory and new books. It was a unique combination, just like the family they had built and the legacy they were creating. Tomorrow, registrations begin for the first technical course in sustainable artisanal production, Emma commented, checking her schedule on her phone. We already have over 100 pre-registrations. And to think it all started with a broken fence and a lost heart? Gabriel smiled, gently kissing his wife's forehead. No, she corrected, her eyes shining in the moonlight. It started with a girl who believed in modern fairy tales and a mother who never stopped dreaming even when life seemed most difficult. The International Sustainable Agriculture Congress in Geneva was packed. Hundreds of experts, farmers, and researchers from around the world gathered to discuss the future of food production. But on that specific morning, all eyes were on a small 9-year-old presenter who spoke with surprising eloquence about her enchanted garden. And that's how we discovered that the magic of science can transform a dry field into a place full of life. Lily concluded her presentation, eliciting emotional smiles from the audience. Because sometimes we need to look with the eyes of the heart to see the possibilities that science offers us. In the front row, Emma held Gabriel's hand tightly, both overflowing with pride. Their daughter, who once played at making wildflower crowns, was now there, presenting to an international audience the results of her small scientific research. And now, Lily continued, her eyes shining with excitement, I want to present the project that was born from our enchanted garden, the Rural Scientific Education Program, which is already helping other children discover the magic of science in their own communities. The presentation was followed by an explosion of applause. Renowned researchers approached to congratulate the young scientist, while photographers captured the moment. Julian, seated next to the family, discreetly wiped away a tear. She's extraordinary, commented one of the event organizers, approaching Gabriel and Emma. And the work you've developed, it's revolutionary. The combination of traditional knowledge with scientific research, involving the community from the beginning, it's exactly the model we need to replicate globally. The afternoon was dedicated to the couple's main presentation, where they shared the complete story of the project. From Emma's first artisanal jams to the current network of cooperatives and the research center. But more than numbers and results, they talked about personal and community transformation. The true success isn't in the numbers or awards, Gabriel explained to the attentive audience. It's in the sparkle in a child's eyes when they discover they can be a scientist, even living in the countryside. It's in the recovered dignity of families who are now owners of their own destiny. Emma added, "It's in the certainty that when we plant love, we harvest much more than fruit. We harvest hope, knowledge, and a better future for the next generations." At the end of the presentation, they were surrounded by representatives from various countries, all interested in implementing similar models in their regions. Proposals for international partnerships, consultancy invitations, and funding offers for project expansion came from all sides. "Mommy, Daddy," Lily ran to them, holding a golden envelope. "Cambridge University wants me to take a summer course in the Youth Agricultural Sciences program." And that's not all, Julian approached, carrying more documents. "The World Bank wants to finance the expansion of the scholarship program to other developing countries." Megan, who had stayed in the United States coordinating operations, made a video call to share more news. The first class of the technical course had graduated with 100% success, and 3 of the jam recipes developed at the research center had received international quality certification. That night, in their hotel room overlooking Lake Geneva, the family gathered for an intimate moment of celebration. Lily, still wearing her Congress badge, browsed through a digital photo album that Megan had prepared, showing the transformation of the property over the years. "Look, Daddy!" She pointed to an old photo. "That's you arriving all wet and scared at our fence." "The best fall of my life," Gabriel smiled, embracing Emma. "I had to fall to learn to fly." "And here," Lily continued, browsing through the photos, "the day we planted the first seedlings of the enchanted garden. And look how it is now." The most recent photo showed an aerial view of the property, the verdant fields cut by organized paths, the research greenhouses gleaming in the sun, the training center full of students, and, at the center of it all, Lily's enchanted garden, now an educational space where children from all over the country went to learn about science and nature. "You know what I like most about this story?" Lily asked, nestling between her parents. "That it's better than any fairy tale because it's real, and it keeps getting better every day." Emma kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "And do you know why, my love? Because this story was written with true love. Not the kind from fairy tales, but real love, that builds, that transforms, that makes us grow. And that sometimes," Gabriel completed, "needs a broken fence and a lost heart to find its true path." Through the hotel window, they could see the lights of Geneva reflected in the lake, creating a scene that seemed straight out of a dream. But the true magic wasn't in the stunning view or the day's achievements. It was there, in that family, embrace in the love that had transformed not only their lives, but an entire community. The return to the United States was greeted with a celebration that brought together the entire community. The berry field, now at the peak of its production, had been decorated with lights and flowers, reminiscent of Gabriel and Emma's wedding day. Welcome banners written by the children of the youth cooperative stretched between the trees, and the aroma of freshly prepared jams filled the air. "Welcome back!" the community shouted in unison as the family got out of the car. Mrs. Wilson, of course, was at the front of the group, her new hat decorated with artificial fruit bobbing as she hurried to embrace Lily. "Our international scientist," she exclaimed, pinching the girl's cheeks. "Now I can truly say I saw this story from the beginning. I always knew. Always." The celebration extended through the afternoon, with presentations by the children from the youth cooperative, demonstrations of new products developed at the research center, and many, many shared stories. The success of one was the victory of all, and each person there had their own account of how the project had transformed their life. As the sun began to set, Gabriel asked for everyone's attention. Hand in hand with Emma and Lily, he climbed onto a small improvised stage. "A few years ago, I arrived here as a lost man, fleeing from a world that had lost its meaning," he began, his voice laden with emotion. "I found much more than a hideout. I found a family, a community, a purpose." Emma continued, "What we've built here together is larger than any dream I could have had when I started making my first jams in the kitchen. It's proof that when we plant love and trust, the harvest is always abundant." "And now," Lily took the floor, surprising everyone with her poise, "we're going to do even more. Because the enchanted garden is growing, and there's room for all dreams." It was then that Julian and Megan took the stage, carrying a large covered model. When they removed the cloth covering it, they revealed the expansion project they had kept secret. A complete educational complex with laboratories, a library, auditorium, and accommodations for students from all over the country. "Green University," Julian announced. "The first higher education center entirely dedicated to sustainable agriculture and rural development. And the best part, it will be built here, integrating theory and practice, tradition and innovation." The news was received with applause and tears of joy. Farmers who had never dreamed of seeing their children in university now glimpsed a different future. The dream that had begun with a broken fence had transformed into a beacon of hope for an entire region. Later, when the stars already shone in the sky and most of the guests had departed, the family gathered in their favorite place, the house porch, the same place where so many important decisions had been made, where so many dreams had been shared. "Mommy," Lily called, her face illuminated by moonlight, "remember when you used to tell me stories about charming princes?" "I remember, my love," Emma smiled, caressing her daughter's curls. "Now I understand that the most beautiful stories aren't in books," the girl continued thoughtfully. "They're the ones we write with true love." Gabriel pulled them both into a tight embrace, his heart overflowing with gratitude. There they were, his two princesses, who had transformed his life in ways no fortune could buy. "And our story," he whispered, "is just beginning." The gentle night breeze swayed the leaves of the fruit trees, carrying with it the scent of flowers and the distant sound of laughter from children who had played earlier in the enchanted garden. It was a symphony of life, love, and hope. On the horizon, the lights of the future university center were already being installed, bright points that promised to illuminate not only the darkness of the night, but the paths of future generations. And so under the starry sky of that special night, the Carter Bradford family celebrated not just their achievements, but the certainty that life's greatest treasures are not kept in vaults or bank accounts. They grow in fertile fields of love, bloom in sincere smiles, and multiply each time someone decides to open their heart to welcome a stranger on a stormy night. Because after all, the true happy ending isn't a single